I do not support any of the views of Derick Dillard and the transphobic comments that he has made on his Twitter and social media. These conservative views are hateful and derogatory to a very large population of people that deserve love and acceptance and understanding. So please keep in mind as you watch this video, even though I'm showing things that Derick Dillard has said about the Duggar family, that I am not in support of anything that he has said against the transgender community. These are just things I have to show and I have to talk about in order to help build the story so that you are able to understand why Jill Duggar is no longer close with her family. With that being said, there are very brief references to disturbing things in this video that may be sensitive to some viewers, so please watch at your own discretion. Today we're going to be talking about Jill Duggar and how she allegedly left her family and broke away from the brainwashing that I truly believe all of the Duggar children are experiencing growing up in their very conservative religious family. Now, I have done 2 other videos on the Duggars, and this video was actually highly requested by you guys. I still get comments to this day. After doing all of my research into this, I definitely have a lot of thoughts which may be a little bit different than what you guys would actually expect. But with that being said, I'm going to go over the evidence that we do have of Jill Duggar and if she has truly broken free of her family and of the brainwashing from growing up as a Duggar. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. She was born Jill Michelle Duggar on May 17th, 1991, making her a Taurus and 30 years old as of today. She was actually born in Tawnytown, Arkansas, and I'm very familiar with it. I grew up in Salem Springs, Arkansas, which is not a big town at all. And if we wanted to go anywhere that was a little bit more interesting, we would go to Fayetteville. And in order to get to Fayetteville, you had to go through Tawnytown, which has like a population of 3,677 people as of 2019. It's a very small area, and I don't know exactly where the Duggars live because I'm not a stalker, but I know it's a small town and I kind of know a little of the area that they live in just from seeing familiar things on their show. Jill is one of the oldest children in the Duggar family. She was actually number 4 out of 19. And as we've discussed in other Duggar videos, all of the girls had to take care of their siblings growing up because of the buddy system. I'm not against siblings helping each other out. What I'm against is kids being put in a position where they have to do everything that the mother is supposed to do and the father is supposed to do for their kids because they're not given a choice. When you keep popping kids out and they get employed as a babysitter and they didn't have a choice into that, I'm not for that. I think that kids should be able to have a childhood that isn't them, you know, having to wake their siblings up and get them dressed for the day and to feed them. Jill was actually assigned chores growing up, which the family called jurisdictions. And in 2004, one of Jill's jurisdictions was said to be washing the family's clothes. And then in 2007, one of her jurisdictions was preparing lunch each day. And then apparently in 2011, her jurisdiction was secretary work. So I just thought it was really strange they called these things jurisdictions, but whatever. When the Duggar family first got on television for their special 14 Children and Pregnant Again, it was 2004 and Jill was only 13 years old.
If a boy comes, it'd be good too, because it would make 10 boys and 5 girls, and then there'd be half and half, or half and anyway.
She didn't really come off as shy. She would always speak positively about the family and the great aspects of growing up in a large family. Jill would later become a midwife, helping to deliver babies.
This is our prenatal room, and we have the bed here, table, and then just kind of like our supplies over here.
And she also would volunteer for the fire department and aided in the rescue efforts for the F5 tornado aftermath in Joplin, Missouri. So she has a really good heart and she does really good things to help people, which I admire and I really appreciate. You know, when you volunteer, you are choosing to help others knowing you're getting nothing in return. But because of the way they were raised to believe was that their purpose as a woman was to basically find a husband, pop out a bunch of babies, and serve him and your children your whole life, it's not really a surprise that the first guy we know of that Jill got with was the guy that would become her husband. A little bit about Derick is he was born Derick Dillard on March 9th, 1989, making him an Aries. He grew up in Rogers, Arkansas, to his parents, Rick and Kathy Dillard. Graduated from Oklahoma State University with a bachelor's degree in business administration, and he also did a lot of volunteer work in Nepal. And then a random thing is that I think at one point he worked at a Walmart neighborhood market, because I remember seeing him and he was wearing like the neon green vest that they would wear at the neighborhood market, so I thought I would throw that out there. Now, Derick met Jill on Christmas of 2011 while Jill was caroling with a church group, but it would be between 2012 and 2013 when Derick was doing humanitarian work in Nepal that him and Jim Bob would become prayer partners. This caused Jim Bob to become really impressed by Derick and his godly character, so he started talking to Jill about him. Remember in my last video where I talked about how Jim Bob would give the men that were marrying into the family, like marrying his daughters, pages of stuff that they have to fill out, like even about their finances, and he does this to like get to know them, and it comes off like an auditioning process. It just comes off like Jim Bob chooses who his kids marry, and I think that's really, really weird. In March of 2013, Derick and Jill actually had a pretty brief phone conversation. Derick had been on the phone with Jim Bob because they were prayer partners, and Jill had walked in the room, and Jim Bob was like, "Hey, Jill just walked in. You should tell her a little bit about yourself." Jill said she did not think too much about Derick after that, but Derick, however, was praying about Jill, trying to figure out what God had planned next for them. This reminds me so much of Jim Bob and Michelle.
This time that Jim Bob and I met, I don't remember meeting him. It wasn't love at first sight because I really didn't even talk to him.
It definitely was love at first sight.
Towards the end of the month, Jim Bob gave Derick Jill's phone number, which is another thing that's weird. Don't do that. The two of them began courting on television in November of 2013 and only courted for 3 months before becoming engaged in February of 2014. It wasn't even a full year after they began their courtship that they were married on June 21st, 2014 at Cross Church. They settled into a home that was owned by Jim Bob in Northwest Arkansas after their honeymoon. You know, I'm sure for Jill that everything was just flying by so fast. I know in the beginning of all my relationships that I've been in that that's when everything just kind of zooms by you. It feels like everything just flies by, and before you know it, you're in year 2, year 3, year 4. Like everything goes by so quickly. And then after 10 months of being married, she already had her first child, so she conceived a month after they got married. And also just to note, like it's not uncommon here. I don't know how it is in other places. I only know, you know, from where I'm from. It's not uncommon for girls to get married really young here, but the Duggar kids had it a little different because of the courting process. They believe that you don't date, you court to see if you're husband and wife material. You then get engaged, and their first kiss, even the first time they front hug, is often after they get married in front of the audience that just watched you get married, which is the weirdest thing to me. I did see Jill said in a Q&A on their YouTube channel that TLC really played that up and made it seem weirder than it was, and that they didn't actually consider it courting.
I feel like there was maybe some misconceptions about our courtship because it was definitely a little bit more played up for the show and all of that, so things maybe weren't as weird as they seemed.
I think now the fact that she's saying courtship is because that's what you all would know it as.
Yeah. We preferred to call it like dating with a purpose.
Also, I didn't know this until I watched one of her YouTube videos, but apparently they did get alone time. She said they spent like 11 hours or something like that on Skype without any supervision.
My parents were not on all of the Skype calls. Like literally they popped in a couple of times. Less than 1% of the time they were on the calls. Actually, the first 2 times we Skyped, my parents weren't even home. Like
for 11 hours on our
I cleared it with my dad first. I was like, yeah, are you cool with like me Skyping with him? And he's like, yeah, I think that's great. You can get to know him more, like see him and stuff.
So her parents weren't on all the Skype calls, but keep in mind, she was in her 20s when she was asking her dad for permission to have a Skype call. Jill has said that they were allowed to make their own rules for their marriage, but she also said that if Derick had wanted to hold her hand, he would have had to ask Jim Bob's permission for that.
We waited to hold hands until we got engaged, but that's something that wasn't like a rule. Like we could have held hands before that, we just didn't. And that might actually be something that I would have done differently, that we could have done differently. Was just
I
hold
think
hands
maybe we
earlier.
would have, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were I was 25 when we got engaged. Like, I don't know why I wasn't holding your hand already. So, my bad.
I don't know. Was it encouraged by our parents? I'm not actually sure.
No, it was.
It may have been highly encouraged.
You were the first daughter who
I don't
got
remember.
married. So, like, it was just
remember.
because I never grabbed your hand. We never,
No,
like,
you would have had to clear with my dad. He totally would have.
You think?
Yes.
Thing is that if you raise your kids up to believe that they're not supposed to have any sort of physical anything with their partners, then they're gonna choose to not do that. You tell them you need to choose amongst yourselves on if you guys want to, you know, hold hands or not, or hug each other or not. Like, that needs to be between you. But you already brainwashed them into thinking that they should abstain from all that stuff. So it's kind of manipulative to me. It's a manipulation tactic, in my personal opinion, of making somebody feel like they're making their own decisions, but really you already brainwashed them into making the decision that you wanted them to make. When you make your kids feel like when they're older and they're in relationships that it's a sin to have a physical relationship, which is a normal thing that many people that start liking somebody wants to have, they're going to want to get married really quickly so that they can do that while they're married, because you're teaching them that that's the only time that they can do that. And this is why a lot of people in these extremely conservative religions end up marrying the wrong person. For instance, Anna Duggar marrying Josh Duggar, who we all know what he did. I'm all down for you making your own decisions, but if you have that viewpoint that you should abstain from everything, chances of marrying the wrong person or getting into a relationship that isn't healthy is even higher. The fact that parents would teach their kids these things, risk them getting into toxic, abusive relationships because they're taught to marry somebody pretty quickly. It's so dangerous. And I can't fathom that a parent would find it better for their kid to have that viewpoint than to be in a relationship longer and get to know somebody before you get married. Unfortunately, shortly after she gave birth to their first son, Israel, that's when the scandal broke loose about her brother, Josh Duggar, SAing. I use abbreviations here because I can't say the actual word, not because I'm trying to silence it, but because I want to keep my videos monetized and ad friendly. But he SA'd his siblings and also a babysitter. It was a police report that was leaked. I have a full video about it linked down below where I share what happened and also how messed up it was in the way that everybody in the family defended Josh for this and stood behind him. Jill and her sister were two of the sisters that actually came forward and did an interview on the Kelly File in defense of Josh Duggar. And it was really hard to listen to as you guys watched with me in that video because they just mirrored what their parents said. And you can tell that they were taught to think that way and feel that way. And it was just wrong. Some of the things that were said. And like I said, I don't blame them so much for it because they were taught this way. A lot of time in conservative religions, you are kind of taught to forgive and love the person that hurts you. And I think this was just another example of that. And actually it's really sad. But they spoke out also against the police records getting reported. They were really upset about it getting leaked to the public. It wasn't something that they wanted out there, which I respect. They said that the release of the police reports was re-victimization. She also expressed concern that the police reports detailing her abuse being made public might discourage other families from experiencing abuse from seeking help. So after all of this happened, we all know Josh Duggar was booted from the show, and Jill and Jessa were kind of the two front heads of a new spin-off show from 19 Kids and Counting called Counting On. This was supposed to follow them in their new marriages, you know, as new little families. I feel like it was TLC's really sneaky way of continuing to profit off of the Duggar family. Didn't seem any different from 19 Kids and Counting. Everybody continued to be on it, and it had the exact same vibe and feel as the rest of them, just without Josh Duggar. So I feel like it was their way of how do we get around the public wanting us to cancel the show, but also keep making money off of the Duggars. In July of 2017, they welcomed their second child, Samuel, just 4 months after they were booted from Counting On. The reason for this boot was because the network didn't support Jill's husband, Derick's transphobic views, because on November 2017, Derick made very disturbing and transphobic comments about Jazz Jennings. Not only was he using the wrong pronouns, which is so disrespectful, but he was also saying that he pitied Jazz and that her show was propaganda. He said, "If I say I feel like I'm Nepali, it doesn't make me so." So he has like very conservative, hateful views against the transgender community. He also had said that our brains aren't fully developed until we are 25, which is funny to me because he married Jill when she was 23, meaning her brain wasn't fully developed to make the decision to marry him. And obviously, I do not support those viewpoints at all. I really hope that the two of them educate themselves on transgender rights and equality, because I think that they may not even realize that their viewpoints are recycled viewpoints from other people before them. And I think it's very important that if you don't understand the transgender community, that you educate yourself on it.
Do you have non-Christian friends, and are you accepting of the LGBTQ plus community?
Yes, we have lots of non-Christian friends. We have friends who are part of the LGBTQ plus community.
As Christians, we believe that there are certain things that are sinful, like adultery, so cheating on your spouse or something, or sex before marriage, homosexuality. Like, those are things that we believe are sinful.
In 2019, Derick started being really public about his actual views on some of the things that were allegedly going on behind the scenes for a very long time. They said that even though they had only started talking about it, that this was not new. This is something they've been dealing with for a long time. He said that they weren't booted from the show, that TLC actually begged them to stay on, but they chose to leave voluntarily. If this statement is true, that means that TLC would be fully willing to keep people on their show that have transphobic viewpoints as long as the public didn't come at them hard enough, making them remove them, which is really gross. He said that they had wanted to actually leave for a long time because they did not like the way that the show was going and they weren't into it. They've been asked on numerous occasions, would you ever get back on the show? And they have made it very clear that with the way that it is, that they never would. Now it's been canceled as a whole, so there is no more getting on it. And then Derick started making comments that made it sound like the two of them were not getting paid for their time while they were on the network. And this would later be confirmed when they did a Q&A on YouTube. They were discussing their financial situation and how since they left the show, Jill was doing a lot of social media work and stuff on YouTube in order to, prevent them from tearing through their savings. And again, Jill said even though it was nice getting to travel and stuff like that, that they were never paid for being on it. If they truly did get kicked off and TLC wasn't begging them back and they chose to let them go because of the stuff that Derick said, I agree that they should have been booted off of it. But I think you should get paid for your work. Like, it's illegal to not receive pay for your work. Like, if you're on reality TV, yeah, you're not acting, but you're still working. You still have to be on camera. You still have certain things that are structured. There are a lot of scenes that are kind of staged in ways. So it's still work. It's not like you just get to, walk around, eat, sleep, and fart. Like, you have to do things to get the show to be entertaining. They also had, all of their little mini interviews and the little scenes that would cut to them where they were talking about things that they were doing. So, it was work. They said that they eventually had to get an attorney involved and they had to sue just to get the money that they had earned from being on TV. But unfortunately, they didn't get all of the money that they earned. And Derick actually said that she was basically paid minimum wage at the end of the day. And while he's talking about it, she actually looks really sad.
Up until around the time we left the show, we hadn't been paid for anything. Of course, there were perks that came along with filming. If you were traveling or whatever, they might cover those expenses and stuff. And we were grateful for those, but yeah, we hadn't been paid until we were really pressing about it, and ended up getting an attorney involved and stuff. And
basically once we got an attorney involved, and we were able to recover a portion at least of what Jill should have been paid up until the time we left the show, even if in the end it probably ended up being a little bit more than minimum wage at most.
Yeah,
we were able to recover at least something.
This is an interesting thing about that. The contract with all of their shows is under Jim Bob. Jim Bob would be the one that would be paying the kids on the show. You're putting your kids on TV. You chose to have a large family, and you were profiting off having a large family. You were profiting off of them after choosing to have 1 million kids, and then putting them on television that they didn't have a choice to be on, and then not paying them until they take legal action against you. There's so many things about that that's wrong, because she was on the show when she was a child and also when she was a teenager. So if you're not paying her, that's child labor. Entirely sure if this whole situation with them not getting paid was a big wedge with them in the family, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was. And then even though Derick was prayer partners with Jim Bob at one point, it started becoming really clear that something happened, and he started kind of alluding to how he really felt about them. This comment on Twitter was really interesting, where someone asked if Jim Bob was the one getting all of the money, and I think his sarcastic reply saying, "I don't know, you would have to ask him," speaks volumes. Because at first I was like, was it TLC that wasn't paying them? But that comment just drives it in even further. It's Jim Bob. People continue to speculate that they were estranged from the family because they stopped appearing in as many photos. And then people noticed at one point that Jill wasn't following her sister Ginger anymore. Now I see that they are following each other, and they have come out and said that they put their differences aside, whatever that means, I have no idea, and that they're still working on things. Jill is definitely made it clear she didn't have support from the family when she left the show. And then she did an interview earlier this year, February 2021, where she said that things hadn't gotten better.
You talked a little bit about, some distancing with your family. Did your family give you support during that time, or was that like one of the biggest challenges?
Yeah, there were definitely some issues there. It was hard. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of support there. Yeah, when we left. But it's been a kind of a long journey, so it hasn't gotten, I wouldn't say it's gotten better since then, but I think we're just continuing.
We're in a better place than we were 6 years ago.
Yeah, but like I wouldn't say that it's gotten like significantly better.
And then I was listening to another Q&A where she said that she hasn't been to the family home in years. And also they were asked, are they ever invited to family events? And she said not all of them. It's just really clear that they not only stepped away from the family, but that they also stepped away from a lot of the views and brainwashing that occurred growing up as a Duggar. People were really shocked when Jill started doing things publicly that the Duggar family doesn't believe in doing. For instance, wearing pants. And she said that she was actually reevaluating reasoning for not wearing pants, and that she realized that she could be just as modest with them. And then she also got a nose piercing. She said that there were a lot of things that she wanted to do growing up, but that she didn't do because she was scared of judgment from her family. So she also started sending her kids to public school, which is not what the Duggars believe, because they have that really messed up curriculum I was telling you guys about. So I'm really glad that her kids are getting proper education. I'm fine with homeschooling as long as the homeschooling that they're getting is good homeschooling and not what the Duggar kids were taught. And she even posted a picture where she was drinking a pina colada. But what I will say is that they said that they still think drunkenness is sinful because that's what the Bible says, but they're okay with an occasional drink. This is a comment that Derick had liked that someone had posted under a photo on his Instagram. And when he liked this, it was really telling to everybody else, because he didn't have to say that he believed that Jill was brainwashed and that she was emotionally abused in the home. Just the fact that he liked this comment shows that Derick and Jill do believe that she was emotionally abused and brainwashed. So that brings me to my opinion. Do I think that Jill has left the family, left the brainwashing? Do I think that she still has the same views? I think that they are still very conservative. I think they're more along the lines of like the typical Christians that you see here, where it's okay to get tattoos and have piercings, but they follow the Bible, they follow God's word and try to act accordingly. She said that she's Southern Baptist. They're still very much religious, and I know that they were raised up to believe the things that they are taught. We are all influenced by what we are around the most, and I think this is just another example of that. It's just really, really hard to change your entire mindset on something when it's literally all you know. Imagine that you were told that there are green aliens that live on Mars, and on August 15th, 2034, all the aliens are going to come down in their spaceship and they're going to put you in it and take you up to heaven. If you're told that and everybody you're around, or most of the people that you're around, all have that same belief, as crazy as it sounds, you're going to believe it. If you have something beat into your head and constantly being talked about around you as a child, even when you become adult, it can be really difficult to break away from those mindsets. And even when people do break away from cults or, toxic religions, they still have the same thought processes that they have to work through. A lot of people need therapy after they come out of situations like this, which Jill has talked about. She does go to therapy. And I mean, I can also attest to the fact that we live in a conservative area. If you haven't watched my other videos on the Duggars, I live in the same area that they do. I've seen them on numerous occasions, and we have a massive Christian population in the US in general, but in the South, most of the people I know here identify as Christians. There are churches on every single corner. I feel like because I live in the same area as the Duggars, I can give a little bit more of an insight into them, not because I know them, but because knowing the area that they grew up in, I have a better understanding of how they're so deep into what they're into. Or I feel like a lot of people that do videos on the Duggars, they're not really aware of how conservative it is here, even though I don't think that she got away from her viewpoints entirely. It's nice to see that she isn't being so hard on herself, that she's learning healthy boundaries, that she's allowing herself to express herself with what she wears, what she does with her hair, what she does with her face, how she raises her children. I'm just proud of her for doing something different, and I hope that she continues to learn. I encourage the both of them to learn about transgender rights and equality and to further educate themselves on that. I really feel like they could grow and evolve. I think that they're on the right path is what I'm trying to say. I feel like they're going in the right direction of learning to think for themselves and to form their own opinions, and I just hope they continue that way. That way they can, continue to raise their kids up to not be the way that the Duggars were raised up, because I don't think it's right. Anyways, I wanted to give you guys this video because this was very highly requested. So if you liked it, if you want more Duggar content, give this video a thumbs up, because I mean, there's a lot of things to say. There's been a lot of new news about the Josh Duggar situation that I'm totally down to talk about if that's something that you guys would like me to do. And if you guys have other video ideas on topics and things like this that you would like me to talk about, definitely leave me those comments and I will get on it. Also, if you would like to become a member of my channel, that join button is right down below. Definitely click that. I post vlogs, more personal videos, and I would love for you guys to join and become a member, but it's totally optional. I love having you here, and being a subscriber is good enough for me. So I will be seeing you guys very shortly with another video.